I don't own the rights to this music.
You
I
ready?
do not own the rights to this
Uh.
music. But we
Little
gonna
dog, I'm
listen.
extra unique. My whole aura scream telling. I've been listening to feel like Griselda and Marvin Wine just to make sure I'm balanced. I'm from the West, yo. Half of my partners is savage, the other half made it out the mud, but the taste of sludge didn't alter their palate. Yeah, I'm a dog, I'm a beast, and your father figure. Yeah, that little P365 was just that starter pistol. Yeah, she got a scorpion too, and a sting you just like a scorpion do. If a demon get gregarious, my little Harry don't do what accordions do. That means bold, I was told, got a these are bold. Keep your lady close, make sure she can work a pole. But they was preferring strippers. I'm still walking with the clippers. I done been blessed with a woman that play heavy, but turn her back on the leather. She hit the devil on me like the cherubim. She make it clear to hold that we ain't sharing them. I wish that you can easy like a chariot. They allegedly we have to bury him. Yo. But that's how I be in the jungle. I grew up around wildlings and mongrels. Ready to slump you. If you a jungle. I rock the stars to be humble. I told my baby girl she gon' have more in her head than just product and bundle. They say I'm rapping with hum. I tell them hell on me. If you book big for a show and I can't bring my wife and my babies, I'm leaving. Big daddy energy speaking. I keep the enemy tweaking. I can go all on the track and they'll say I'm the hardest one breaking. I am a big
Happy
player. I got my name on like
Friday.
I go easy. That's how we get my left if you black, we're safe. That's my sign. Throw it up and I'ma put it down until
That was something a little different for Friday night. I was feeling that. I hope y'all were too. So we are going to get into the last part of my story. So hello everyone. I am back with part 5 of how a hot girl summer turned cold. And as I've said all week, in recognition of Lupus Awareness Month and Women's Health Month, which is the month of May, I'm telling my story in a 6-part series. I'm also raising money for the Lupus Foundation of America, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to improving the quality of life for all people affected by lupus. If you didn't catch my videos Monday through Thursday of this week, the last full week of May, I have been sharing how in the summer of 1998, when I was very much a hot girl and I thought I was going to have the best time enjoying summertime Chicago, but instead, I was hanging out in emergency rooms between Milwaukee and Chicago, and I spent a total of 33 days hospitalized, of which 14 of those days I was on the critical care unit. And I had to have 2 different heart surgeries accompanied by a collapsed lung and a whole host of other issues. And I went from hot to not in record time. So, yesterday I had to come armed with reinforcements to tell the story. I came armed with wine, and we are going to finish this bottle tonight. This bottle of wine is called Storyteller. I found this in my stash. I didn't find it on purpose. It is by Sonoma County Ever After. It's a red blend. It's actually very good. So, Storyteller, I'm telling a story. We're going to go ahead and get through this and I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to wrap up the story tonight, but I'm going to really wrap it up tomorrow. So I'm going to have one more part to this and I'll end it in 6 days. So yesterday, I left off talking about how I woke up and I have my cardiothoracic surgeon who was a relatively young doctor. I'm guessing he was in his late 30s. I I doubt very seriously if he was 40, and that's very young to be in a specialized profession such as a cardiothoracic, to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. So he was relatively young in terms of being a specialized surgeon. And he was telling me how he cut into my chest and then he cut into my heart sac. So he cut a square hole into my heart sac. And so I almost felt like, I don't know, I was on an episode of Girlfriends, or remember what was it, the Carrie Bradshaw TV show? I don't know why I can't think of the name of it, but remember in the earlier episodes of Girlfriends and that TV show where they would kind of cut to where they were talking to themselves, and it was almost like they had bubbles, like bubbles in their head. He was just really, earnestly explaining to me what he did, and I was just thinking to myself, like, this dude is nuts. I'm not even really listening to what he was saying. I'm just trying to get over the fact that he's just explaining to me. He's like, Renee, look, I've gone in and I've done what is called a pericardial window, and I have gone and cut a square into your heart sac. And I'm telling you right now that once it heals, it is going to form a scar. It is going to heal, it is going to form scar tissue, and it is going to harden. And it will potentially constrict the way your heart beats. That tissue is going to constrict the way that scar tissue is going to constrict the way your heart beats. So ultimately, Cornay, what's going to have to happen once we find out what's wrong with you and once we get you healthy, when you become healthy, you are going to have to come back in here, and I am going to have to cut you open, and I am ultimately going to have to take your whole heart sac. We can't have your heart sac with scar tissue, and we can't have your heart constricted, the beating of your heart being constricted. So we're going to have to take it. So that's a lot of information. It's too much information. And I'm literally looking at this doctor like, do you really think that I'm going to walk in here on my own 2 feet and have you cut me open and do something else to me? It's bad enough that I'm in here, not of my own will. I'm in here because I have to be. And I'm literally just thinking all of these crazy things and trying to plot my escape. I'm just trying to think of how I could get the hell out of the hospital. And I'm asking him, and the first question that I asked him is, how long am I going to be here? And will I be able to start school at the end of August? And the doctor looked at me. I'm telling you, he really looked at me like I needed a psych evaluation. And I'm not exaggerating because he actually used those words in talking to my parents. He basically said, I honestly don't think that your daughter understands, the magnitude of what's going on here. We don't even know why she's here. We don't even know what has attacked her body to why she's here. It is unfortunate that she has contracted an infection in the hospital. And at this point, I am fighting an infection, a very common infection that gets contracted in a hospital. But because I'm fighting for my life against a staph infection, them kind of finding out what's wrong with me in the first place is almost all but put on hold. And I'm just like, why can't y'all just slap a band aid on it? And I got to go back to school. I mean, I have 1 semester left before I graduate with my master's degree. I had 3 classes left to take. I had 9 credit hours before I am on my way with my life. I am done with school. I could stop being a poor college student, a poor graduate student, or whatever you want to call it. I had all of these plans, and I am literally sitting here
On my
with
way
a hole,
with my life,
with a
I'm
hole,
done.
with a hole in my chest. Oh, I'm sorry about that. I have my Bluetooth on, so that needs to go off.
Battery 40%.
That
Connected
needs.
to Rick's G8.
Uh
Thank
oh.
you.
Uh oh. Uh oh. Uh oh. I am plagued with technology issues, but that's okay because technology loves me and I love it. Technology loves me and I love it. And it's just that simple. So again, I'm wanting to go back to school. I'm thinking, can we like wrap this up in a couple of weeks? Can you like put a band-aid on it? And, can I just like go on with my life? And the doctor's just like, um, yeah, we're gonna have to try this again. So mind you, he's telling me this, and I haven't even paid attention to the fact that I have two tubes coming out of me. They are two fairly large tubes. I have a tube coming out of the front of my chest where he cut a hole in me, and I have a tube coming out of the back, out of my back. It was like right below my shoulder blade. So he goes on to explain to me what those tubes are, and what they're doing is that they are, the term that they used was that they were irrigating me. They were irrigating me from the front and from the back with antibiotic. They were literally just washing the area of my heart from the front and from the back. It was just antibiotic coming in, coming out, coming in, coming out, because the doctor did the best he could with suctioning and digging out a lot of that infection. So now he's just trying to wash it out as best as he can with antibiotic. So going back to when I noticed that I had the infection, because they didn't even inform me, they were hanging a bag of nafcillin, which is kind of like a lower level antibiotic, and I noticed that they hung a bag of vancomycin. And again, not to get too technical with medicines, but at the time, vancomycin was the top of the line of antibiotic back then, and heck, it still might be. I don't know. Um, so the bottom line is that if you have a strain of bacteria, or if you have an infection that vancomycin just won't kill, then you are a sitting duck, and that's exactly what I was. I was a sitting duck. There are some strains of staph that vancomycin won't kill, and so they had to put me on the top of the line antibiotic that was available. It was like the gorillacillin of penicillins. And if you have something or have contracted something that vancomycin won't kill, then oh well, you know, that's just the end of you. And so that's what I have, washing through the front of me and washing through the back of me. And I have some Doogie Howser doctor telling me that, yeah, when we put you back together and when you get well, and oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to have to come back and cut you open again. So that was about there. Um, So I don't know. Maybe it was the next day, and mind you, I am still very upset with him because I felt like he left me to die. Because again, I just don't have the emotional capacity to accept what is happening, and I just couldn't put it all together. And of course, later on down the line, I'm intelligent enough to get it, but I wasn't getting it. So I don't know. Maybe it was a day later, a couple days later. The doctor comes back with these revelations. He's coming back and he's like, "Well, Cornell, I've been thinking about you. Um, and by the way, we have plastic surgeons. You are young. We care about your body." And he was telling me that, when I had to come back and have the second surgery so they could literally remove my heart sac, I don't have one. It's called a pericardectomy, where they remove your pericardium. I don't have one. Um, he says, well, what we're not going to do is we are not going to cut into your sternum. We are not going to crack the bone in your chest. And, I talked about giving me that zipper, like, when people have bypass surgery or have to have heart transplants. He said, I've been really thinking a lot about you and a lot about your case. And, we have a procedure that's called a thoracotomy. And he said a thoracotomy is a very difficult surgery. He said it's actually less invasive. I could use a laser, but he said it's more difficult in that we would have to go under your breastbone and try not to break any of your ribs. We would actually have to cut under your breastbone, spread your ribs, and pray to God we don't break any. But he said it's actually less invasive, but it's just a more difficult surgery. And he said that would be better for you because you're young. It would be minimal to no scarring. And, these are all of the things that he's thinking about. He's thinking about me. He's thinking about me being 23 years old. He's thinking about me being a woman. And he's thinking about me being a young woman. And I guess even bigger than that. And of course, I couldn't see any of this until later. He's thinking that I am going to survive this. And that's what he's focused on. And he's focused on, the doctor's focused on the end result. What is going to be the best thing for me in the long run as far as my health, and also what is going to be the best for me aesthetically as a young woman, as a very young woman, going out into the world and what my body looks like. But of course, in the moment, I couldn't appreciate any of that because I'm looking at him like, you have got to be out of your mind. I need to be out of this hospital in about 2.5 weeks because I got to go back to school. And that was all that I was thinking about. That's again what youth could do to you. I really could not appreciate my predicament as this doctor was trying to explain to me why I got these two tubes coming out one coming out of the front of my chest and one coming out the back of my chest. So I don't know. So I'm on the critical care unit, after that surgery, I'm there for a week. And, most of the beds and the rooms on the critical care unit, they don't have windows. And so I'm just like in this box, but I'm conscious. I'm not an unconscious patient. And I'm kind of going nuts. And so because I was somewhat doing okay given my condition, but I was still in a lot of pain because they weren't giving me any medicine. I still wasn't getting any treatment for the lupus, by the way, which I still didn't know I had, right? They were still trying to figure out and running all types of tests of what could possibly be going on with me. But the immediate concern at the time was fighting this infection. That was just the bottom line. I had to survive the infection. So I don't know. I was probably on the critical care unit for about 7 days, maybe 8 days. And then they put me back um, in a regular room. And then they put me back in a regular room. And then for some reason, my fever just got worse. I just kept spiking a fever. And the surgeon just decided that the heart sac had to go. There was no, okay, once we get you healthy and once we find out what's wrong with you, you come back, we have this surgery. He once again made the executive decision, yeah, we're going to have this surgery now. We are going to take your heart sac now. We have to get rid of anything that has infection right now. And so I only had about a 7 to 8 day recovery time from the last surgery. And then he actually did go in and do that thoracotomy. He went in and he spread my breastbone and he lasered off the top half of my heart sac. So I guess the bottom half is still there. I don't even know how all that works, but they called it a partial extended pericardectomy is what they called it, where he took a laser and he lasered off the top half and he was trying to get rid of as much infection or anything that contained infection. So that was the second surgery that I had, and it literally has zero scarring. I have a line under my breast that couldn't be seen when they were really teeny tiny, and then when they became larger, after I became a full blown woman and had a baby and all that, very minimal scarring. So he was totally right about that. So then I'm back with the tubes again, still with the irrigation, still with the washing away of any infection, and I'm back for a second stint in the critical care unit. I'm back there again. What is interesting which is another story within a story that I won't even get into. Maybe if I write a book or journal this one day. But what was very interesting about my stay in the hospital, particularly on the critical care unit, you only have two nurses. They work two 12-hour shifts. You have a day nurse and a night nurse. And my nurses on the critical care unit were male nurses. And it's not strange today in this day and age, to have male nurses. But for me, 23 years ago, it was a little odd and it was uncommon. And I had male nurses who were, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, they were very, very in tune, and they were very, very sympathetic and empathetic to what was happening to me, and they cared for me. I had one who kind of let me do whatever, kind of let me run amok. He was my day nurse. He was an older white man who was my nurse. And then there was a younger black guy. He was actually my age. He was only 2 years older than me. Tony was mean. He made me do stuff that I was supposed to do that I didn't want to do. And even when I cried, he still made me do it anyway. But when you have open chest wounds, they have to come in and turn you every couple of hours. They have to turn you. They make you blow into a machine so that you don't lose the use of your lungs. It's a lot that they make you do, so that you don't set up with pneumonia and so that you don't set up with a brand new infection. It's a lot of hard work, especially because I was conscious and I wasn't, out or unconscious or in a coma or anything like that. But I found that to be very interesting. And throughout my stay, whether I was in a regular room or whether I was on a critical care unit, I had two nurses who were pregnant. And so I was surrounded by women who were either pregnant, or I had men, who were caring for me. And, there was a lot of symbolism in all of that, for me, that, is probably worthy of a book or something like that, something that I couldn't possibly get through in something like this. But those were all some very interesting things. But so while I'm on the critical care unit, mind you, my parents are coming every day. I would send them home every day because, I just thought it was important that, everybody was stressed out. It was taking its toll on my mom and on my dad. But I just told them, y'all got to go home every night and y'all have to get some rest, because if y'all don't, y'all going to end up in a hospital bed right next to me. Hospitals are where you catch germs and catch disease, and you guys are not eating, you guys are not sleeping, y'all stressed out. This is prime time for you all to get sick because you're so worried about me. So the only time I really wanted them to stay is the nights before I was having a surgery or I was having a procedure, but otherwise they went home every night because we had to kind of get up and do this again, all day, every day. So, so that was a ordeal every day just for my family, and even my friends who were coming by to visit. The hospital food was horrible. I was having people smuggling food in from wherever. I was like, look, who's bringing Popeyes today? Who's bringing Kentucky Fried Chicken tomorrow? Who's bringing me some Hamadas the next day? I had folks on a schedule to literally bring me food into the hospital. And again, my aunt Jolly, hi Aunt Jol. My Aunt Jol is a nurse. My Aunt Jolly is a nurse, and she was there at least, 3 to 4 days out the week. And I was sitting there. She was there, and I was sitting there talking to her, and I don't know who else was there, but she kept looking at my machine, and she was like, "Well, what's going on with your breathing?" And I wasn't even really paying attention. And then all of a sudden, I started to pay attention, and I really couldn't breathe. And that tube that I had in the back of my chest, something happened with it, and it actually poked a hole in my lung, and my lung collapsed. And so now they have to re-inflate my lung because my I mean, of course, it wasn't funny at the time, but I was just like in mid sentence, and then all of a sudden, my breathing just went berserk, and the machines start going crazy, and then everybody had to get rushed out, and then they had to come and fix everything, and they had to reinflate my lung, and that was a big deal because I don't even think I could have visitors for like 2 days because of that, because of the infection, because my lung collapsed, and then they had to go in and reinflate my lung. It just seemed like I was plagued with one problem after the next, after the next, after the next, that had absolutely nothing to do with what we found out later was actually the lupus. It was just, I don't know. I just felt like I was falling apart. And I was worried about all the wrong things. I was worried about getting back to school. I was worried about my apartment back in Milwaukee. I was worried about my apartment back in Tallahassee. I was worried about my brand new car that I had bought about 3 weeks prior. Um, when I started feeling better, I would ask the nurses to wheel me out to my car just so I could see it. My dad would drive it to the hospital. It was a purple Toyota Corolla, and my dad would drive it to the hospital. And probably, I don't know, the last 8 or 9 days is when I was well enough. They would wheel me out to the parking lot so that I could see my car. So my surgeon, believe it or not, something that he would leave to a nurse or another doctor, he actually decided to um, sew me up in the back, take that tube out of the back, and do that stitching himself. And while he was doing that stitching, he had I guess more or less a heart to heart talk with me about how he handled the situation with my first surgery when I heard that he was going to leave me to wait and not operate on me, and just kind of the whole thing of how it was handled. And I don't know if that was his way of apologizing to me, because I was really hurt by that, because I heard it and maybe I wasn't supposed to hear it. And he really had to have a heart to heart to talk. He was like, you're really sick. You are a really sick little girl. And he just kept saying that. And by that time, I was so beat down. I felt like a little girl. That's exactly how I felt. I felt like I was about 4 years old. And I felt like, I had skinned my knee or something worse, and I just needed to be better. And I think it kind of started to sink in. But what was concerning to me, and everybody else, was that they still didn't know what was wrong with me. They still didn't know what landed me there in the first place. But I was well enough to come in an executive room, and I was fighting the infection fairly well. So the infection wasn't winning, thank God, because um, that was the thing that was of most concern. But even still, all the other doctors were working in the background. The cardiologist, the infectious disease doctor, all the other doctors were working in the background, still running these tests, trying to figure out what was wrong with me. So one day, um, the infectious disease doctor came in, and I remember my cousin was there. Shout out to Popsy. Popsy was there. DT was there. Derek Townsend was there. Shout out to Derek. My parents were there, and my parents had just gotten there too, because at first they weren't there. And so the doctor, he cleared the room. He told everybody to get out the room. And then he said, well, we have a diagnosis for you. And he said, you can have anybody in the room that you want. And I told him to have everybody come back in. I had him have my parents come back in. I told him I had Derek come back in, and I had my cousin come back in. So those were the four people in the room. I was like, you can tell me, you could tell them, they've been here. And they basically told me that I had lupus. They said that you have hit on every marker for systemic lupus. And by that time, I had pretty much figured it. In fact, I thought they were going to come back and tell me that I had early onset of multiple sclerosis. Between talking to my best friend and talking to my aunt and knowing what I knew about systemic disease in young women my age, I figured it was one of them, and I just didn't know which one. But for some reason, I had multiple sclerosis in the back of my head because, again, many of the symptoms they mimic each other. So he, went on to explain to me what it was, and I knew what it was. It runs in our family. We have family members that have it. They have it in a different way. So he didn't have to do a ton of explaining because I had a lot of baseline, knowledge. And the doctor asked me if I had any questions, and I had a couple of questions. And one of the questions that I asked him, which was even strange to me in the moment, was that I asked him about having children. And he just was like, he just told me, he was like, as long as you're healthy, he said, as long as your organs are healthy, he said, nobody should be having a baby if, you're not healthy. If you don't have healthy organs, healthy kidney, healthy liver, a healthy heart, then you should not have children. But he said, basically, as long as you are healthy, he said, having children is hard on your organs. He's like, as long as you're, healthy, you should be able to have children, no problem. I didn't have a boyfriend in sight. Um, wasn't necessarily looking to have children or interested in having children at the time, but that was one of the first questions that I asked him. And he just told me that you should be fine. He said that now that we know what's going on with you, the infectious disease doctor took it from there. Then he said, look, we're going to have to put you on a whole lot of steroid um, to, first of all, get you back up to weight. At that point, I had been in the hospital for probably 26 days because after my diagnosis, I stayed probably another 5 or 6 days after they diagnosed me. And I probably lost about, I don't know, I probably lost about 15 pounds, which is a lot of weight, which was a lot of weight for me to lose at the weight I was at because I atrophy. When you lay in a hospital bed, you don't just, lose weight. You atrophy, your muscles atrophy, you lose muscle weight, you lose mass. I had bed sores. All of that stuff happens to you when you are hospitalized and you're laying in a hospital bed. I had a catheter for a month. I had other infections. It was just an awful, awful experience for anybody to have, let alone somebody who was 23 years old, who was a former hot girl, and I come out of the hospital, looking like death warmed over. I mean, I'm 5'9", and when I came out of the hospital, I was 123 pounds. Do you know how thin that is? That is incredibly thin for somebody that's my height. It is incredibly thin. And a lot of that was muscle that I had lost. I atrophied while I was in the hospital. I came home. I could not feed myself. I could not bathe myself. They had me on about 100 milligrams of steroid, which is a lot. They basically had to explain to myself and my parents that I was going to be psychotic. I don't know if anybody knows anything about steroids, that if you're on them for a little bit, they make you crazy and they make you gain weight. And I was on them at a very high dose because I had to um, stop the inflammation and I had to stop it quickly. And it was meant for me to be on a high dose, but for a very short period of time. When they dose you up that high, it is not meant for you to be on a high dose for a long period of time. And I was probably on a very high dose for about a week, maybe 10 days. And then the expectation was to cut that in half and then to continue to cut the steroid in half until you get to a maintenance dose. But while you're on that high of a dose of steroid, you literally completely become psychotic. And so they had to prepare my parents for that. They had to prepare me for that. Um, my face broke out. It's just like when you watch a really bad ABC after school special and you see athletes and and people who lift weights and they want to do it and take steroids. It is the same. It is the same when people try to cheat and take steroids and they take them at high dose and they call it roid rage. That's exactly what it is. And then when you go from taking a very high dose and you come off of it, the withdrawal from it is horrible. It is one of the most horrible experiences that anyone would ever want to have. And so they had to prepare my parents for that because they were coming home with a monster that was effectively a monster that was going to be a monster for about 2 to 4 2 to 4 weeks. Your child is going to be a monster for about 2 to 4 weeks. So hunker down and get ready for that. I couldn't stand in the shower alone. I came home with an IV. They finally put a port in me. Oh, and by the way, when I woke up from the second surgery, I had a line in my groin. That's just because, again, I didn't have any veins. And I still can't believe I spent 3 weeks in a hospital and they still didn't put a port in my chest. When they put a port in you, and I'm sure people have seen cancer patients or people who have to be on long-term medicine where they have to be administered medicine, they have to put a port in an artery and they have to find a major artery and make sure they put a port so that they can draw blood and administer medicine. Well, I woke up from the second surgery with a line in my groin. That's just because the my vein collapsed. I had no veins that would sustain an IV when I was in surgery. So they had to find an artery in my groin. Well, they finally put a port in my chest and I came home with a port and I came home on an IV. And it was even a long road after I had come home from the hospital. So it was a long road. The answer was a resounding hell no. You will not be going back to school in August because it was August. I came out of the hospital August the 30th. August the 30th, school had already started. My birthday is September 3rd. And I had come out of the hospital on August the 30th. So my birthday was 3 days later, and I saw my 24th birthday by the skin of my teeth. So I am going to stop the story here, and really, I'm just wrapping it up. I'm really gonna just bring everything full circle tomorrow. I'm gonna have one more session and just try to bring everything full circle tomorrow. But that is the story of how I was diagnosed with lupus. For those of you who have listened to my story, I hope that it has awakened something inside of you. Your story may not be one of chronic illness or sickness. What is your crisis? It could be divorce. It could be surviving COVID. It could be that you're stuck in a bad career and you need to reinvent yourself. I mean, we all face crisis. Everybody got a story. And I started this by saying that my story is neither unique nor is it special. It's really not. I mean, of course, it's mine. But how we get through crisis, it's a decision. We get to decide how we get through crisis. And I know that the whole time I was going through that, obviously I had a lot of support. I had tons of support, but I was grounded in who I was. I had a lot of confidence that I was going to walk away from that and I was going to beat it. And I was. I was informed. I was in a lot of denial because I woke up like, well, damn, this is my life. I thought I was going back to school. I had a lot of highs, I had a lot of lows, I had a lot of disappointments, but at the end of the day, all of that is just called life. We ask why me, but at the end of the day, we need to be asking why not me, why not us, right? I am who I am. That was a valley, that was a very, very low point in my life. But again, how we get through those low points, it's a decision. So I am Crene Salone. I'm the CEO and founder of Authentically You Academy, and I am your confidence coach. I help professional women who lack confidence and feel undervalued. I help them to be authentic and repackage their skills so that they can find their purpose and level up and just be their authentic selves. I am here to tell you that trusting yourself and having confidence through crisis and after the crisis has passed is crucial. I have mastered some critical insights to sustaining the kind of confidence that can carry you through any crisis. You can reach out to me to schedule a consultation. You can inbox me. My fan page is Coach Cornay Salon on Facebook. Coach Cornay, it's just Coach Cornay. I'll put my email and link in the comments. Life is a journey, and how you carry yourself through this journey called life, you have to use the right tools and have the support system. So, I'll see you guys back one more time, so I can kind of wrap this all up in a bow and just give you some insights, on where my life has taken me since then, and all the amazing experiences I've had. Yes, I have gone on to have a family. I have three beautiful boys. I went on to get married. I did finish school and all those things, and I'll just kind of wrap that up nice and neat. So I'll put a pin in it. And until then, I will see you all tomorrow. And thank you all for tuning in and listening. Have a great evening. Bye.